Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast, brought to you by schooloflaughs.com. Whether you're an aspiring comedian, a part-time pro, or a speaker who wants to become funnier, this is the podcast for you. We'll break down tools, tips, and techniques to help you get bigger, better, and more bookable. And now, here's the show.
Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast. Rick Roberts here, and thanks to our Patreon supporter for this episode, Greg Smurdell. Thanks, Greg. Greg's been supporting the podcast for quite a while now, and we appreciate that. If you'd like to support the podcast through a small recurring monthly donation, all you got to do is log on to schooloflaughs.com/PATREON to find out more and the rewards you can get for sponsoring the podcast. All right, let's jump into this conversation with Jonnie W. and Brian Bates. Hey, I'm here with Jonnie and Brian, and you guys, you're sitting so far across from each other. I wonder is there something going on that I don't know about?
Nothing's going on. I've moved on, but it's been about a month now. But
well, you said exactly a month before we started airing, so obviously you're still thinking about it.
I looked off into the distance like I was telling an old war story, but Bates and I were playing golf, and there was it was hole number 6. We're going along okay. The hole number 6 had this huge hill, so we both hit near the fairway, but you got to go down this big hill, so we decided we're going to stay in the fairway. And then we get to the edge of this hill, we realized this is really steep. Maybe we should go back to the cart path. But I was like, well, I see tracks. Let's just stay on it.
All right,
Bates is driving.
That's basically right. Keep going.
All right, I'll be Judge Mathis. So you're telling me you went over the podcast? What's going on with that?
Do you have receipts for the golf cart? Anyway, so we take off down this hill. And all I know is we're going way too fast. But Bates swears he was riding the brake the whole time.
Yes.
So you know how if you're like riding the brake, it can make the car kind of curve a little bit sometimes. Sure. If you're like on a curve. Well, that's what happened. So it started curving to the left. And now we're almost totally perpendicular to this hill. And we just start tipping. And I've seen all these videos of carts tipping. People in the cart, and they get their arms mangled because the roof of it, just, your arms are hanging out. And Bates is going to fall on me too. So I have all this. So in the split second, I decided to jump out of this cart as it's tipping. At which point, I just land wrong on my big toe and just hyperextend it back, fracture it, and then barrel roll ahead. But me removing myself from the cart, I guess it caused it to cantilever back. So Bates was none the worse. And so I was in a soft shoe. I was off the toe for a while. Then I'm in a soft shoe. Now I'm in a regular shoe. But I'm pretty gimpy still.
So you're kind of like Steve McNair, got a turf toe out there.
I got a turf toe.
Playing through the pain.
I am playing through the pain.
You want to hear the real story,
Sure,
Rick?
Bates,
Let's hear the other side.
All right, he started off pretty accurate. We were playing golf. That part.
That's what I have the most problem with. You guys getting it on the fairway.
I know I got the billboard.
Yeah,
I'm more
that's
of a
where
John, I've got a John
sideways.
Daly vibe to me.
Yeah.
Let's just don't say either one of us was killing it out there. On the
I was
golf
like, hold my
course.
cigarette. I'm going to hit this.
How many balls did you find when you went to look for yours?
It was rough. We weren't playing well. We were attempting golf.
You're on a golf course. I'll accept that. Okay. Playing golf, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a steep hill. I said, I don't think we should go down this hill.
Right.
And Johnny's like, oh, come on, go for it.
Johnny
Look.
says gun it.
Well, I thought I saw tracks on the hill. I was like, people have been down
He's
this
like,
hill.
well, people mow this hill. That's what you said.
Those were probably tracks from emergency vehicles.
The Shelby Golf Course golf cart isn't the best. I was riding the brakes the whole time, but
which is probably what caused it to do the thing it did.
It fishtailed kind of basically, and you did feel the momentum.
Oh man!
So my theory is Johnny fell out of the cart.
How far out from your side were your elbows when that happened? was it like?
Well,
did you hit the ejector?
From Bates' perspective, he said, I started to look over and say, we almost
Yes.
tipped this over. And as he looked over to me, I was rolling. Like,
Yeah, I was like, oh man, and I looked over and Johnny's gone. And I just see him rolling down the hill, and you just fall. There's leaves everywhere, so leaves are just flying. Dirt, grass.
Then he wanted to keep playing. So we got to like the 9th hole. I was like, I don't think I can keep playing.
Yeah.
It was throbbing, and so I was like, I'm going to go home. He kept playing because that's
course.
the kind of guy he
I'll meet you at the car.
Yeah.
Put ice on it.
Why should I stop playing?
And then I texted him later. I was like, I thought I was going to be fine. I thought it was just bruised or, just sprained.
Right.
So I was texting him pictures of like feet and casts and everything. And he was like, are you serious? I was like, nah. But then I did go to the doctor's and he said, no, you have a fractured toe.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh. So I was like, well, the joke came true. But they didn't put it in a cast or anything. There's nothing really you can do.
For your big toe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a lot you can do. You just got to like let it get better. And it's really hard.
I broke the toe next to my big toe when I played soccer, and never had an injury. Played soccer in intramurals, and a big football head guy stepped on my foot and cracked my toe right next to my big toe. So they had to tape.
Buddy tape it.
Yeah, and then it just kind of, now it's longer than almost my arm. But
It took over.
It took over. It's straight. It points due north. It's magnetic.
Yeah, my toe next to my big toe is longer than my big toe.
Yeah, that shows intelligence.
Oh,
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
didn't know that.
Johnny's out there with baby toe.
I guess. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys are at least talking to each other.
We are. We made
because-
peace.
All right.
But our main goal today is to get out of here in time for lunch. So
Yes.
let's get going on that. So let's start off with A rooms, B rooms, C rooms. You're in the comedy club world, Brian, and I did that for a long time too. There's definitely rooms where you look forward to going to because they treat you well. The shows are almost always good because it's set up right. And then there's the gigs that you take to pay the bills sometimes too.
Right.
So why don't you lead us off with,
Name those rooms.
name the
Just go ahead
exact rooms
finish
and
your
booking
career off.
agents so we can eliminate working those C rooms. No, but let me ask you this question.
All right.
In this topic, have you seen any rooms ever change from an A room to a B room to an A room? I've seen them go down. I've never seen them come up.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think I've definitely seen. I mean, I've been doing comedy now for almost 12 years, so I haven't had almost enough time to see rooms make a huge transformation because I always hear about rooms in the 80s that were great and now they've went down. I just worked Pittsburgh Improv and they just did some renovations that definitely made it a better room as far as just the setup. You were going up through the middle of the crowd and you had a long walk, but now you come off, out of the green and off the side of the stage. So that's some aesthetic improvements that they've made. Definitely, sometimes clubs change. I don't want to name any, but that went the opposite direction. But you do sometimes just see either the new ownership and they don't care, or
Well, I'll name some because I'm not really in that world anymore. But when I moved here, I always thought Zanies was kind of a B+ room. Like it was a hard room for most comics. They seem to have the same comics over and over and over and over again, just because maybe it was a simple phone call and the booker or the owner liked the comics or whatever.
Right.
But I think it's moved up in the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, the comedy. Not only the variety of comedy shows that take place on the stage, but I mean they're doing brunches and different things. They're getting people in where they didn't before, and I don't know how turnout
They
is.
have any dark nights now.
Yeah, very. I mean we moved the school last class out of there because it was just too much conflict with last minute bookings and such. But it seems like that room's kind of upgraded over the years. There were lots of B rooms that turned into C rooms.
Yeah.
I used to go up to Cleveland all the time. Hilarities. Now, Hilarities did kind of make maybe a B room to an A room change when they changed locations, and now they're Pickwick and Frolic or whatever they call it up there, and they moved from the warehouse. Akron kind of moved from a B room down to a C room. They had a pretty interesting setup back in the day. There was an upper level, then there was a runway out to the stage, and there was a lower level that was like 6 feet below your feet.
Yeah.
So you're always playing to two crowds. Then they moved locations to almost a venue that's so small that if the comic's not drawn there, it really feels like a bad room because it should be packed. It's so much smaller.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Side Splitters Knoxville was a club I really started doing club work in a lot. And the ownership there was pretty rough and hostile. And they were probably a solid B at one point. And then went quickly to a C and then went out of business. It was like they couldn't. And what I think about B to C is like, what talent are you getting? What are you seeing? Are you seeing guys with TV credits on the posters of Coming Soon? And then you start seeing guys that like, I was a star in the 70s and I don't know, even known for comedy, but I'm coming to Side Splitters to make basically a special appearance.
I'm a pro wrestler.
That's a C room, right? That's
I'm a pro wrestler. Coming to...
Although Zany's does that with Mick Foley or whatever, and they draw, and it's a big deal.
But he's like there for one night, whereas some clubs are doing him for like 3 nights in a row.
Right. Yeah. Or you see clubs pull this thing where they'll say Chris Kattan and friends. I'm buddies with John Christ, and when he was in the Denver scene, they did Chris Kattan and friends, and they called him and said, "Can you be one of the friends?" Which I thought was so funny because it's like they call it that, thinking we'll put this show together, but it's really like, hey, Chris Kattan will do a few impressions from Saturday Night Live sketches. And then we'll throw these local comics up with him.
Right.
We'll make money on it. And it's like a total cash grab. That's a really B room thing to do. Borderline C room thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in B rooms that turn to C rooms typically start papering the room heavy when that happens, thinking they can somehow cut their losses. But all of a sudden you're not getting decent comics and you're papering the room.
Oh, I just thought of one. I'll name some that have improved. Stardome. One of the big complaints about Stardome was the stage was so high that, it's just, you're just looking down.
Disconnect.
And they lowered the stage a couple years ago to make it just more connected with the audience. The backdrop, it's one of the most beautiful stages you'll find anywhere. And you can just tell a difference now when you go there. You're more connected with the audience.
Yeah, because before it was like the pit on the floor.
Yeah, it was a pit.
And they were eating and looking up like a dinner show, especially if you're in the first half of the show.
Yep.
They're still dining and, steak knives going full speed ahead.
I just did comedy on State in Madison, Wisconsin. And you ever been there?
Yeah.
That's one of the best clubs there is. And just little things they do. Like they have a clock, not a clock where you can just see what time it is up there for the comics where you have to do the math. They just have a countdown clock up there so you can see how long you've been on stage.
Why would every club not do that?
I know. I've always
they
thought.
Ask you about, do you want a 2-minute light? Do you want a 3-minute light? Why not just put a countdown clock?
Yeah. Every stage should have it, and they should have it to where if you go over your time, the audience can see it. And then if it goes over 5 minutes, they should show a picture of the headliner in the back room turning different shades of red.
Yeah, the Gary Larson Far Side where the guy's walking out of the bathroom and this huge light's going on behind him that says "Didn't wash hands."
It's sad that it's such a profession where people do go over so much, but the club
show.
It can definitely kill a show, and there should also be maybe a you get out of jail free light. Like if you're up there and you're just eating it, the manager go, hey, the headliner can do an hour and 15. Get out.
Great.
Yeah.
But
he sends word. They ask the guy, then they send word. You get secret messages from on the
a raven lands on your arm. This looks like I got to wrap up, folks.
Well, it's weird because comedy can be this very self-indulgent thing anyway. And then that's taking it to another level when you go way over your time because you're like, I was killing up there. I can't let him go. I lost track of time. It's like, yeah, but that's really unprofessional. But we've all done it at one time or another. But yeah, people that do it all the time, they get a reputation. It's tough.
What's the worst you've ever done it though? Like, what's the most time you've ever went over?
One time I was on tour with Tim Hawkins, which is not a good time to do it because it's not my show.
Uh-huh.
He brings me up in the middle. I don't really open like a traditional opener on Tim's shows. So he'll come out and do almost an hour, like 50 minutes. He brings me out. I'm supposed to do like 15, 16. And then I pitch to intermission. Then we come back, start the second half of the show together. One time I was trying to work in some new bits. And the thing about that is, as you know, you can not account for the time that the new bit is taking up in the set. Then you get, I got to go back to this solid thing because that new bit kind of rambled and I got to get. And somehow I ended up doing like 23 minutes. I mean, it was way, way over. And I knew it. When I got off stage, I looked at my phone. I was like, oh, no. And I just apologized to him. I was like, hey, man, I'm sorry. And I think he made a joke about it. He came back to the bus after he knew I was like sweating it. And he was just like, hey, can you look at my watch? Something's wrong with my watch. He was being a real, it was funny. He was kind of being a smart aleck about it, but also kind of let me off the hook for it in a way. But I felt terrible because, again, it's not my show, and I felt like I'd totally taken advantage of this thing,
Yeah, that's funny. The last time I went over, I was at Comedy Off Broadway with Jeff Caldwell maybe 3 or 4 Thanksgivings ago, and I was supposed to do 20 in the middle spot, and then he was going to do an hour. He was trying some stuff out for TV or whatever. And the last time I'd worked with him, maybe it was 4 years, no, probably 6 years before that, and I was doing a lot of guitar stuff, and I really wasn't setting him up right.
Yeah.
And so I was really like, man, I'm gonna make things right, and then I want to get him on my podcast to talk about when he did Letterman and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so we're talking before the show starts, and he's like, all right, man, have a good set. So I go up, and they have a stoplight that has red, yellow, and green to tell you, when it's red, it's time to get off. And it wasn't working, and I didn't bring my watch on stage. I think at that point I was just bringing my cell phone and hitting the timer, but I didn't do that because I knew they had the thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't. The light came on. I didn't have my glasses on, and I missed it. So instead of doing 20, I
can't see light without your glasses?
Apparently not, because I kept looking in the spot where it's supposed to be, and I saw nothing. I did 45 instead of 20.
Wow.
On the first night of the week.
I don't feel so bad.
And the whole time I'm like looking for signs. Like, I think I've done enough time. Even when I wrapped up though, it was so disorienting that I'm like, maybe I went short. Like I couldn't tell.
Man.
Because it's like going through a lot of material. I'm like, what's going on here? So when he was coming up stage, like, hey, you get all the jokes in you wanted to get in, kind of a look at my face, and I had to apologize to him after, and I was good from there on. But so now I always take myself
over 200% over your time,
and I probably give the crowd 15% of what they expected.
Yeah.
It was just not a good way to start the week, but luckily he was super nice about it. It was no big deal to him, but it did throw off the check drop and some stuff later.
Yeah.
So now I always bring my big cell phone, and I put the timer on it where I can see it. I put it right where my feet will be, and I don't care if the audience sees me looking at that, because I'm not going to go off any longer than I should. What about you, Bates?
You don't wear a watch like ever?
I don't wear a watch, period.
Wear a watch either.
Yeah. I like to have a stopwatch just as a backup, just in case.
Well, when I had a stopwatch, what would happen is sometimes I would bend my hand in a way that it would stop the stopwatch, and then I would look down, and it's like blinking at 12. I'm like, how long has it been blinking at 12, So then I tried
everything.
Yeah.
I tried everything, putting a cell phone in my coat pocket, and then I tried to figure out a way to make the alarm just vibrate rather than start chiming. I couldn't figure out a way to do it on the iPhone, and I was just like, but a watch. I feel like when you look at if I was to look at a watch, it's like taking your eyes off the road or something. I feel like the crowd can sense it, but maybe they can't. I'm just very self-aware up there. I'm always like, even when I stop to take a drink of water, I feel like the crowd's like, get on with it. I have this I'm very sensitive about that, so I think looking at a watch would make me feel weird.
When I did wear a watch, I would put the watch facing me sometimes, so it wasn't as obvious.
Yeah.
But
it looks like you're looking at notes on your hand.
Yeah. Got a great joke about 12:15 coming up.
What's up with fingers, you guys?
Anybody got them? Raise them. Have you gone long in front of Nate or anybody that you've opened for on a regular basis?
I haven't. No, I don't think I ever. I mean, I've had I've had bookers say that was 5 minutes too long, and I'm like, well, I was only doing 5 minutes. And they're like, yeah, I know. So I've had plenty of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've had more than a couple of minutes over. I've never had anybody complain or anything.
That's a good one. I like that thing at the end. Oh, you mean my closer? No, when you stopped. I like that thing at the very end. You stopped talking.
It's neat when I do the audience warm-up thing, they have a countdown right on the TV camera.
Yeah.
So I see it, and when it gets to 5 minutes, it turns red. And what's been really fun is every warm-up set, I'm doing different things, but I see that timer, and I've always landed it within like 3 seconds before the timer went off, no matter what joke I was in. Sometimes you cut tags or whatever, or you give up a big punchline at the end to get there, or you just kind of cut something short. And I've got a couple of jokes that are like 30 seconds, so I know I can get into those. But it's kind of retrained my brain on how to end with a bang, even though it might be a 30-second bit instead of a 5-minute bit.
It might not be the bang that you are expecting, but they don't know. They have
no idea.
Lost the big tag or whatever.
Yeah.
That's good. I think people that do like network television a lot, they have an advantage of that for sure. As far as knowing, I know this bit's exactly this long.
Yeah.
I don't really think I could ballpark all that anymore unless I just really sat down with it one day.
It's good to do once a year or so, just to kind of listen to what your typical set is, typical night, and just, hey, this is 3, this is 5, this is 2. I used to do that when I would do a cruise ship once in a while because you'd have so much free time.
Yeah.
I would listen to everything, and I'd go back and I'd time it all out, so I just knew. But having those 15, 20, 30-second things to get in and out of are really good.
Well, I did this thing, this conference where I had to have like 5 or 6 10-minute sets, which is really hard because you have to get in, get out on a big laughs, and have a middle that's strong. And I had to do that 5 or 6 times. It was like, oh my gosh. But one thing it helped me do, and what to your point about knowing how long your jokes are, there were jokes that I was like, okay, this is right at the edge of 10 minutes. I need to shorten this joke. And it would get just as big a laugh, and I'd be like, oh, that joke's too wordy. I hadn't realized it until you tell it a short version of it, and it gets as big of a laugh. You're like, oh, well, I can just trim this joke now.
Yeah, that's funny because sometimes I've got kind of story bits where I feel like it's a rubber band. The more I pull on it, the more tension. When I hit the punchline, it's a bigger laugh.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just needed a shorter rubber band, like the same amount of tension.
Okay.
Because you can do it in a third of the time. You know what I mean?
Analogy. Yeah.
Not the rubber band theory of comedy.
Look for his book, Hendon Publishing.
Looks like Johnny's toe.
I'm going to look at my watch now and see if this podcast is on time. Oh, we're almost done. So I guess we kind of veered a little bit off the main topic there. But yeah, A rooms, B rooms, C rooms. A rooms, the setup for A rooms, there might be a clock on stage that helps you. The crowds are good consistently. They're marketing it right. They're getting good comics. For church groups where you feel like it might be a B setup or a C, like I would never want to call out some church and go, your belief in God is about a C level right now. But they don't paper the room necessarily. But what do you feel would be a...
Well, sometimes you could equate it to papering, though, if it's a free event and they're calling an outreach or something, and they're saying, hey, we just want people to come out and have a good time. We're going to do this. And sometimes if people don't have any investment in a show, just like a papered room at a club, if somebody pays $10, they're going to laugh $10 worth. Mm-hmm. That's just a general rule, unless you're terrible. But they'll make it free. So sometimes that's an issue. A lot of times churches will do events for the first time. That's when it's almost like a guy just starting a comedy club. You don't expect it to be good for a couple of years. Well, sometimes churches will do that all the time. They're like, we've never tried this. They don't know the rules. Mm-hmm. I'll send them the writer and say, this is what you need to do to have a good event. And a lot of those tips I got from you. And they won't be able to do 5 or 6 of them out of the 10. And so I'll get there. There's speakers in the ceiling, or there's no way to lower these lights. I'm in a gym. So they got those weird kettle lights. If I turn them off, they'll take 30 minutes to warm back up.
Right.
So I have to just leave them hot. So I hear the buzzing of the ballasts on the lights, and I'm just on this weird 4x8 plywood stage. So there's some of that where if you get into a church that's done 5 or 6 events, we just had Jeff Allen. We just had Michael Jr. Well, I know that they're ready. So that's a relief sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's almost like walking into a solid club room where you're like, okay, they know the deal. They're not going to be thrown by any of this. But so that's the only thing I could compare it to is like, I hate speakers in the ceiling because I do music in my show. So it's not like I'm just a monologist. So it really affects the quality of that. It sounds like elevator music, whatever I do.
Right.
I do music through speakers in the ceiling or something.
And do you find that the further the speakers are from the audience, the more they appreciate you?
I like that part at the end.
Yeah. Hey, going to break in just for a second. I forgot to remind you that there's 2 things you might want to take advantage of as the new year rolls upon us. First off, we have live writing classes in Nashville, Tennessee. That'll be January 7, 14, and 21 from 6 to 8 p.m. Those classes are all you need to know about writing. You get about 14 assignments in those classes. You turn them in, I look at them, I give you some feedback, and you get to meet some cool creative people along with that. Class cost is $200, but if you prepay before December 25, you can get 10% off, bringing that class cost down to $180. Also, if you are not in Nashville, but you feel like you need to get some ideas on how to make your comedy career go a little bit bigger, better, and faster, get more bookable, you can join Club 52. This might be the best deal on the planet. If there was a deal like this out that I could take, I would take advantage of it. Club 52 is a weekly email prompt. I'll give you one specific thing you can work on in your comedy craft, your business of comedy, your performing of comedy, something that's a doable, tangible morsel of comedy that you can knock out in a weekend if you need to. And you get that email once a week, and you also get invited to a quarterly Zoom hangout online where you can ask specific questions of not just me, but the other people in the hangout. You can do that for as little as $7 a month. If I was going to make a $7 investment in my comedy career, this would absolutely be it. You get an accountability group, and you get those weekly prompts, and you get to meet some other cool people from around the country. So You can find out more about that at schooloflaughs.com/PATREON. If you want to get involved with the classes in Nashville, shoot me an email, schooloflaughs@gmail.com, and put prepaid discount in the subject line. All right, let's get back to the fun interview I'm having with Brian and Jonnie. Now, I think you hit on something there and it's interesting because in corporate and churches, a lot of times it's the first time.
Yeah.
And that's always not necessarily a red flag, but it's an alert to, hey, you need to help them a little bit to figure this out.
More coaching for sure.
And you know that, hey, we're going to make it work. Like I'm not going to be a prima donna walking and go, but it is going to take some extra work. A club that remains a C room because they keep doing the same things over and over again wrong is kind of in a different situation. It's almost more sad than the occasional C gig or whatever for a corporate. I get corporate events too, where if it's the first time, that sometimes their idea of what will make it perfect is the worst possible stuff, and you have to kind of talk them out of it. We'll have you go up during dinner because they're all going to be sitting down and all those things. But there also are some situations where, like I've done shows like I just did one a couple weeks ago up in Cincinnati. I'd already done an event for these people. I did my speech. They wanted me to come in and do my comedy. So I said, how many people are going to be there? Like, we got 18. It's like a manager's retreat. I'm like, all right, it should be fun. So I get to the venue, and it's a state park kind of setup.
Yeah.
So it's a big, not even brick, like stone building. There's no heat. Like they've been trying to get the heat going. And this is a group of HVAC people. So it was even more funny in a way, but they should have had it figured out. So the heat kicks on right before I go on. Yeah. And because it's a small building, there was no place to put a sound system, so they just didn't have one. There's only 18 of us. Yeah. And if they'd been quiet, like from the furnace thing was like right above me, so it was like an audible the whole time. So I had to kind of really speak loudly, almost yell, and it worked, but it wasn't the best, And that one could have been an A one, really simple, if they could either just get the heat going early or put up a microphone. Man. So you have those recurring gigs that aren't as good as they were the first time. It's like an A gig that went to a B gig, but the location was the main thing. Yeah.
So this is what I really wanted to talk about, was the corporate A room, B room, and C room. I think I threw this out a few months ago because when I do corporate, which is not very often, they're usually what you would consider C gigs because, there's advice that you give me, like, obviously ask that there not be done eating and things like that. But sometimes when I talk to these headline big name comics, they're like, oh, make sure that they lower the lights as you walk on all this stuff. I'm like, they don't even have lights.
Right.
They don't even have a stage. I'm usually doing some picnic pavilion or something like that, and it's tough.
It can be tough.
I mean, a lot of the stuff it doesn't apply because they don't have it. I can put it in the rider, but there is no rider.
We talked about that at dinner the other night. They're like, and the scale only goes to 8 at a corporate event. Like, you don't get a 10. 10 is like once in a blue moon. But if you get an 8, that's like a standing ovation. If you get a solid, like they loved it, you felt good, it's like you're walking on air when you just walk out of there, because there's so many things going against you in a corporate event that you're foisted on them is really how it is.
A lot of times, I think there's several components that make it a harder gig than it needs to be. But that's what you're paid to do, is to come out but when they've been at a conference all day long in the same chairs around the same tables, and then all of a sudden we're going to break for 40 minutes and come in, we're going to eat and then sit in these same chairs. Like, it's just, they've been, I've been in that situation before at a conference where I'm like, oh gosh, this thing.
Another guy.
And not only is comedy required mental interaction to get the punchline, but they've already hopefully been listening intently all day long. So like, your ability to do that for a corporate person, they do that twice a year for 3 days or whatever, and it's like they're oversaturated and overstimulated basically by trying to interact. So sometimes you walk in there, it looks like they're shell shocked almost. So you kind of have to make it a little bit more playful and a little easier for them.
One thing I thought about the other day, and I was telling Brian this, is like, we have those rules, like, because you do corporate and I do a lot of churches and conferences, and we talk about food. I get a lot of food events, banquets, especially this time of year, Christmas time. And we always talk about make sure they're done eating food. People don't laugh very loud with their mouths full, whatever rules I give them. And I say, hey, this is best practices. And I was thinking about that. When you do comedy clubs, I do comedy clubs. I do fine. They're always eating. Why do you think it's different?
Well, I think part of it is in a comedy club, it's finger food. And not everybody in the comedy club's eating. True.
But they're whispering to waitresses to bring them another Coke. I mean, there's talking
But you've got the lights and the sound that are.
And the waitresses can act like ninjas. They'll run around there in their black outfits.
And they know why they're there at a comedy club. They came to laugh.
That's true. And they're invested in it. Yeah. Whereas at a corporate event,
it overrides the eating thing.
Yeah, I think so. And typically, I don't think the comedy clubs have silverware. It's usually like plasticware, so there's not even that noise going on. And they're not all clearing the tables at the same time.
Yeah,
that's the one thing I really have this past year.
Of plate stacking. Oh my God!
I said, listen, I don't mind going up after dessert's been put down, but what I have to say, the wait staff has to stand down. They can't be clearing the buffet, even if it's 200 yards away. They can't be picking up forks and knives. Period. Mm-hmm. And I just say, if they do, you're going to wish that we never did the comedy show. And I kind of look at them like, just trust me on this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it means the staff has to stay there a little bit longer, but you just can't compete with that weird, inconsistent
they're moving
noise
around in your field of view.
Yeah.
And it distracts you. They're going to miss a part of the setup that they needed to hear.
Yeah. It's brutal. So
you, if they've been in meetings all day, you said something about you try to be more playful off the top. It sounds like you just a little something that's just so different than anything they've been listening to.
Yeah, like for example, I don't typically do a lot of crowd work at a corporate event because I figure they're paying to see greatest hits or whatever. But in that situation, I might start off with a little bit more of, I may have seen the list of what they listened to today, and I won't make fun of the speaker, but maybe the topic is something that's kind of funny, and I go, I saw you guys were doing how to remove industrial waste from a basement, some riveting topics. Hopefully my comedy will keep up with that. I'll just try to acknowledge the fact that they've been there all day, and unlike some of your speakers, I won't go long, whatever I can do to kind of let them know it's going to be fun. But I always will just say, you're going to have fun. I want you guys to relax. There's no stress. I'll just almost give them permission to remove all that.
Yeah, I like if it's something like that where it's like waste removal, or they know that their job is weird and dull to think about, and so they don't mind you jabbing it. I did one. It was in Savannah, and it was for it's a big nice hotel. It was for the American Association of Wire Rope Fabricators. So I read it. I was like, wow. I read that. I was like, these guys know how to party. And they got a big laugh because they know it's like, this is the dullest thing ever.
Yeah.
So they like an outside perspective on that sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit of, and you do, I think, a good job when you do corporates. Most times you don't customize it a little bit if you have some time. And
I do. Sometimes that has not worked out well, though.
Well, yeah, it's like a real interesting double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because if you lead with it and it doesn't work,
you're in a hole.
Yeah, you're in a hole. And if you lead with it and it works great, but you can't practice it. You only have that one shot to throw it out there. I do like the risk of doing that, but I don't like when it doesn't work.
Well, it's just a delicate balance because sometimes it's almost better you make fun of yourself first before you make fun of them because I don't know, it's just a tricky joke. Like if they're like, where's this guy coming from?
Yeah. Well, I have sometimes where I lead off with the Barney Fife doing tickets. Mm-hmm. They'll give me information on people, and I'll tweak it a little bit. Or if they interact with it, I'll just kind of go off the cuff with them for a few seconds until I go to the next ticket. And this past year, I was doing a chamber banquet, and the thing about the gal was she never met a pet that she didn't love, and she had a lot of extra pets or whatever at her house, and her neighbors were starting to complain because there's too many dogs barking. And as Barney Fife said something like, "Well, I got a friend who can take care of that, Mike Vick." And I thought it would get a huge laugh, and it was like, ooh. Yeah. I'm like, it's been 6 years, people. Yeah. As Barney Fife, it's been 6 years, people. I don't even have a friend. None of this is real. But just like that really reset the tone, and my program didn't have the normal reaction. I knew it was from that. And so halfway through the whole thing, I'm like, are you guys still mad about that Michael Vick thing?
Oh my god.
And a couple people I'm like, my apologies. And then from there it was fine. But they were still thinking about what a rude thing to say.
Yeah. Well, I just did the Amway thing. It's like 7,000 Amway salesmen, and I always thought of you because you said you did a thing at the Amway Hotel,
and
you did it. You opened with something. What was it? I can't remember.
Don't you guys love the Amway Hotel? I had a room on the first floor. I found 2 guys to buy my room. I upgraded to the 3rd floor. 3 more transactions. I'm in the penthouse suite. Yeah. But it
So I was
wasn't.
like-
It wasn't for Amway employees. Though. It was
Yeah,
just at the
right.
hotel.
So I was like, should I? Because you said you're welcome to do it. I was like, I didn't risk it. The one I thought of that I knew about right away was too mean. I was going to say, it's so great you guys can get together, 7,000 you all together in one place. You can only do this one time a year. It's so cool that y'all have this because I know none of your friends or family will take your calls. But I thought that's immediately I discarded it. But it's funny, but too far.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost one of those things. Later in the show, you might be able to get away with it.
Yeah.
Or
once you've established that you're self-deprecating and et cetera.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll work those in where when I get a guy up to sing with me on stage, if it's a company event, if I've had some of those ideas, but I didn't want to lead with them, I'll see if I can work him in there. Like, so how long you been with the company? And, then put those jokes in there. And if they don't work, you just move on right along. But if they do work, you kind of egg it up a little
if
bit.
that goes bad, you're like, tough crowd, man. You don't like this guy. I think you blame it on him.
Yeah.
I guess you don't like Dave.
They're turning on their own up here. Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of different little things that make A room, B room, C room. What would be like your dream scenario? We'll say for your niche. So
Yeah.
Johnny be thinking about like your dream church gig.
Okay.
Brian, you may already have a club that you think is, man, I can't wait to get back there. Well, what's the nice setup for you? Clientele, setup, all that.
Well, I would say that obviously the crowd's the most important thing. Just a really invested crowd that's engaged in it, and for me personally, probably appreciate my style of humor, clean humor, stuff like that. As far as the setup, a green room is nice because some clubs have them, some don't. And a clock, like we said, that's always such a nice benefit. A stage that's high but not too high. Good sound system. This makes me sound like a diva now, but my own bathroom and
Well, no, it's all good.
Yeah.
well, it's
things you're not stressing about that put your mind on something besides your act.
Some clubs you do have to use the bathroom with everyone else, and before the show, no big deal because no one knows me.
Right.
Yeah.
When I get off stage, I really got to go. And now they've seen me. I don't want to have to be talking to people while I'm in the bathroom.
Hey, buddy, good set.
Yeah.
Thank you.
can
How's
just
it
see-
going over there?
I'm in the stall. And you can just see my shoes.
Yeah. That is kind of interesting. Yeah, I always hated the comedy clubs where the bathroom was like literally 3 minutes away from the stage.
Yeah.
'Cause as a performer, that's like the last thing. Like, I should go to the restroom whether I need to or not, so I don't get distracted up there. It rarely is. Have I ever thought about using the bathroom once I hit the stage? But before, I always think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's in a different part of the room altogether, I mean, you want to be close to the stage when the music starts or
Yeah.
whatever. You don't want to be out of the room. But yeah, a bathroom in the green room is a nice thing.
Yeah. Just so you don't have that awkward conversations
Yeah.
with people.
Well, or you don't hear stuff like, "Man, that was a long show, wasn't it?"
Right.
Yeah, because sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
Yeah. Or before the show, hope this guy's good. If I'm in there, I'm like, me too, and I'll make sure I look at him when I get on stage. Like,
People do. That's when they talk. That's when they talk the most. I remember the first real comedy show I went to. It was when Comedy Central was brand new, and they were sponsoring like these tours. And there was a tour with Richard Jeni and Kevin Meaney co-headlining at the Tennessee Theater. So I was in my town, Knoxville, Tennessee. So we go. I was a big Kevin Meaney guy and Richard Jeni guy, and they both did 45. Well, Kevin Meaney goes first. And he's so weird and absurd, and I loved it so much. And then we go down. There's an intermission. I go all the way down to the basement where the bathrooms are at this big theater. And there's these guys standing there and the urinal, and they're talking to each other. Like, that guy's so weird. He's terrible. And that was the first time I realized, like, comedy's really subjective. Because I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen.
yeah.
I
Like,
couldn't wait to see Richard Jeni too, but I liked them both in different ways. I like really silly comedy, and I like really smart comedy, like Richard Jeni would do, ranty kind of vibes. And it was so weird. And I was like, oh, this is how it is. This is how it works. People just really have strong opinions about this, and what's funny to me may not be funny to them.
right. Yeah. And then who knows what they're saying about you guys?
That's true. That's the thing. That would be so. What if Kevin Meaney was there? You'd just be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, Brian, on your setup, or is that?
For comedy club, I mean, that's
What about your demographic? Like, what's your ideal audience? Like, if you look out and there's 300 people, what's the mix?
Teens.
elderly. No, I don't know. Probably 30s and 40s as far as age. Women probably tend to laugh a little bit better, especially at my humor. And I don't know. I mean, just people who appreciate clean comedy and aren't looking, there for dirty stuff, because they're probably going to be disappointed.
Gotcha. Johnny, what's your dream church setup gig?
Enough tables for all his merch.
That's right. 5 tables in the back for me to set up my circus, all my wares. What Bates just said is interesting to me, the whole idea of a demographic. I like a mixed ages crowd, no little kids necessarily, because they distract the parents, but like, I don't mind a few kids that are sitting with their parents and listening, because I really enjoyed comedy at that age. So it doesn't bother me if there's an 11 or 12-year-old there and they are watching and they like it, because I have a lot of fans that are that age, and I have some sillier things in my show just for them anyway.
Right.
That's the thing about church comedy is you have to have a lot of material right away, because you can't just start out with 5 minutes in a church. They say, hey, well, here's 30 minutes. And you got to go, wow, I don't have 30 minutes. And you have to really grow into it quick. And the other thing is you have a wide demographic of people. As far as age-wise, you have to make an 8-year-old laugh and an 80-year-old laugh, and that's not easy to do. So, I like, but what Bates was talking about with women women are way easier laughers, to the point where people who do nothing but women's conferences, there are some comics who do a lot of women's conferences, and there's a danger of it making you soft, because it's such a vibrant audience, it's such a friendly and there's an ease to them. There's no guard up. Men come in with their arms folded.
Oh yeah.
And you got to break down. Like, I do men's conferences, and you got to break down. And I'm very self-deprecating and very like, I don't hunt, I don't have a gun, and I talk about it on stage, and I have to really win them over.
Yeah.
And so, but whereas a women's crowd is like, this is going to be Beatlemania. Right. I'm going to sell every T-shirt I have. This is 800 soccer moms. It's on.
You're the Pete Best of comedy.
That's right. But there are nights like that where you just go, this will be whatever. So I would say I liked having a good mix, but knowing that if it was my druthers, I would say a heavily female audience is just going to be more fun. Although the nightmare of every comic is like a bachelorette party or something where it's rowdy women, and they're not there for you. They're there to hang out with Brenda because she finally found the one, and blah blah blah, and they're being silly. So
you have a lot of bachelorette parties.
We don't have a lot of that in church. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, there is a tribalism that happens sometimes with women in a group where they're not listening to you. So that's the danger too. So if you do women's events, but I like a mixed ages crowd. I asked Tim one time, Tim Hawkins, I asked him, what is your favorite crowd? And he said, it's not really an age. He said, I do better in a room that's silly. So if people are willing to go silly with him, so then if he does something clever, they'll get it too. They're educated, but they're also willing to be really silly with him. That's when he really thrives. And I think I'm the same way, because I have some things that are just like dumb wordplay things, but then I have something that's a little bit, it would be over the head of a 12-year-old or 13-year-old. It's not like a dirty joke. It's just an adult topic.
Right.
And I like a room that can get both. And that's one of the reasons I think I like mixed ages crowds. So, and all the things Bates said about the room are probably similar to me. A good sound system. And Buddy Hackett used to talk about his monitor on stage. And he wouldn't mean like a monitor like your sound monitor. He would mean the number of things that are distracting you in the room from just focusing on being your true funniest self. So if the lights are too high, that's a 1. If the guy over here is not laughing, that's a 1. And then whatever that number is keeping you away. So you want to be a dead like 0 to dead ahead, like you're going to be your funniest self that night. And I think not knowing how far you've gone, how much time you have left, are they dropping checks? Is that a glass clinking over there? Oh my gosh, they're clearing tables. Those are things that he called his monitor. And I think about that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Focus is key for sure.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I like age-wise 40s and up. I don't mind younger, but I don't want them to be the dominant demographic, because all my stuff's about having kids, being married.
So you'd rather they have kids too, then?
Yeah, it helps. I mean, if most of them do, and if they've got adult kids now, fine, because they all start out kind of the same blobs, worthless little blobs, before they grow into somebody. So I do like that silliness level. I don't know. I would like crowds will be a little bit more relaxed. But I do find the older they get, the less silly they are.
Yeah.
Obviously, the stuff that makes you laugh when you're in junior high still makes you laugh today. The further they are away from junior high, the further they are away from laughing at those things, typically. So I kind of like crowds that might be a tad more patient. I'm not the wordiest guy on stage, but I do have some stories that are going to take a couple of minutes for the big payoff. There's laughs along the way. So I like that. I don't mind kids being in the crowd if they're with their parents, like you say, 11, 12 and up. That certainly is okay with me because a lot of my jokes, my kids help me write jokes sometimes. In fact, my son a lot lately, you should talk about that on stage. You should make a joke out of that. Yeah. So I'm starting to listen to him because he still has the junior high sense of humor because that's where he is right now. Yeah. So if he thinks it's funny, it's probably funny. You know what I mean? Then I like a 50 to 60 minute show. When they have a hard contract for an hour, I always say 50 to 60 because sometimes they do 60 and they laughed 50 worth. Yeah. And sometimes they do 50 and they're worth 60 worth. But don't worry about the exact time. The key is that we get off stage on a big note. They've enjoyed the experience, but they don't feel like they've stayed too long. Then outside of that, I would like something focused on stage for a few minutes before I get up there at a corporate event, especially if the CEO or the HR person or somebody gets up there and does a little bit of housekeeping, recaps maybe the day, and gets their focus.
Okay.
And then they turn it over to me. I like that a lot better than the lights go up, somebody reads an intro and butchers it, and then here's your comedian. And then again, I think they should know that comedy is going to happen that day. When they wake up and they look at their schedule at a corporate, and they should know tonight we got a comedian. Yeah. They can either look forward to it or they can go off premises and go get a dinner somewhere else if that's not their thing. But I don't like when hey, we've been keeping tonight a secret. We got a comedian for you. Some people are like, some people love it. Some people are like, I think it's good if they know ahead of time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want something like that sprung on me. Hey, we've got a guy who's going to teach how to juggle eels. Oh, really? That's great. Yeah. I'll watch it until he gets bit twice and I'm out of here. But I think there should be some expectations, some excitement, and then delivery on that. You don't always get that opportunity, though. Sometimes it's like, it is, hey, we got a surprise for you.
Yeah, sometimes if I'm at a conference or whatever, they'll say, this guy's going to do your intro. What do you want your intro to be? And I'll say, well, they're coming back from lunch. Kill as much time as you want up there doing announcements. Hey, if you guys don't know, here's where the bathrooms are. Anything you say is less time I have to kill trying to get them settled. It's like I call it substitute teacher mode. You're in substitute. Don't put me out there as a substitute teacher. They respect you already. You've been a speaker here or whatever it is. Whoever's introducing me is usually somebody that's the voice for that company or for that organization. So I'm like, they'll listen to you, and when you start talking, they'll know it's time to quiet down. Whereas if you just go, ladies and gentlemen, and then it's me, I got to spend the first 5 minutes of my tried and true material just fighting against the tide. So sometimes they don't understand that you have to do extra coaching, like you said. It's worth it. Yeah, definitely is. And if they can give something away, if they're going to do a raffle or something, do one of those because everybody wants to come in the room to try to win the prize. That makes sense. And they're immediately focused on what number am I?
Yeah, so they're all at the table, they're listening.
Do it before you go up?
Just one. Like if they're going to do 10 raffles, don't do all 10, but do one to get everybody back in the room and something's on the microphone they can focus on.
Yeah, when we come back from intermission, when I do the shows with Tim, he has like a throwaway thing he does where he plays harmonica and goes around the crowd and takes selfies. And it's funny enough. He rides out on like a little scooter thing. It's just really silly, but it's basically a throwaway thing where he's not wasting material while they all come back.
Right.
And it's a pretty clever device. If you do, he does an over 2-hour show. So if you count my set and then intermission, it's about 2.5 hours with intermission and everything. So it's like, that's a device he figured out a few years ago. Like, okay, I got to figure out a throwaway thing that still is entertaining, but I didn't waste material on people I'm aiming my jokes at people walking down aisles to find their seat again. So
that's good. I can see where maybe a video or something would do the same kind of thing, but kind of get them focused.
It's like flashing the lights at the opera house or whatever, let people know like, hey, the show's starting back or whatever.
Yeah, and I've thought about for years of having some kind of video for when there's the opportunity to have a screen of like a 60-second, the comedy show's getting ready to start, that covers the intro, the whole 9 yards, so that does the trick. I've never put that together, but I might actually do that this year. Cool. Well, I think we're going to leave it at that for today.
All right.
You guys can find my co-host today, JonnieW.com or Jonnie W Comedy.
JonnieW.com, JonnieW.com. BrianBatesComedy.com.
and BrianBatesComedy.com.
That's right.
Check them out, see what they're up to. I know Johnny's got some dates coming up for the rest of the year,
I'm out
some
with
churches.
Brian Bates this weekend, actually.
Where are you guys at?
We're going to Oregon.
And Washington.
And Washington, Vancouver, Washington. So
Well, stay off the golf courses,
That's right.
my friends. That's good. Is it a public show?
Yeah, these are both public shows, both at churches. One's at New Beginnings Church in Central Point, Oregon, and then one's at Crossroads Church in Vancouver, Washington.
Okay, so that's the first and second.
It's Friday the 30th.
It's the 30th and second.
And then Sunday.
We got a day in
Okay,
between.
so
day in between to play golf.
if you that's right. If you guys download this on the day of release, you can still catch that second show and check out their websites. Johnny's got the dates up on his, I'm sure. Then click through and get tickets. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the School of Laughs podcast. If you'd like to hear more School of Laughs podcasts, you can find them on iTunes and Stitcher.com. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. For information on upcoming live and online classes, visit schooloflaughs.com. Until next time, stay tuned, stay focused, and stay funny.